Springfield's Talk 1041. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show. Good Wednesday. My name is Nick Reed. We are streaming live, KSGF.com. Also on YouTube, Springfield's Talk 1041. You can find us there. And, pretty much anywhere that you stream your stuff. And then podcast. We've got the show up once it's completed. Spotify, iTunes, the KSGF app. KSGF.com. KSGF.com and the app, of course, places for you to get registered for Lunch Bunch, Retro Metro. When we have any sort of contesting, we've been doing a lot of concert giveaways for Thunder Ridge Nature Arena. I don't think we currently, it seems like the first time in, I opened the wrong thing twice here. Sometime. It seemed like weeks we'd been giving away concert tickets, right?
I know.
Hank Williams Jr. was the most recent, I believe. Let's see if we have.
They've got a lot of great shows down there.
Yes, they do. They have a tremendous amount of fantastic shows. And, in fact, the Girl Child's going to be headed down to one sometime this summer. And I think they said last season, I know we just talked, I think we opened the show talking about this yesterday too, but they had 7 or 9 concerts, but they're going to have 20 or 21 this season. The way they talk, this is the first, what they feel is going to be first season of concerts and events that is going to be like the standard, not necessarily in terms of performances, but just the number of performances and different events they have and so forth. And one of the things that they really were hoping that we would pass along is if you have been to events in the past and you thought, oh, the parking was frustrating, or they want people to know that they have worked really to improve it. And one of the things that I told the Girl Child, when you go to the concert you're going to, go early because they have a fun zone there now. This is pretty smart. They deliberately set up hours before a concert an area with food trucks and activities to encourage people to come early and give them something to do before the concert. That way you don't have a huge line of people all trying to get in at once.
Yeah, they can just kind of funnel in.
And the way they talked, if I understood it right, 2 o'clock, like if the concert starts at 6 or 7, it doesn't matter. 2 o'clock that day, the fun zone will be open, and that will hopefully flatten the curve, if you will, when it comes to people all trying to get in at once and have it spread out over a period of time. Someone texted in asking who our winner was, or if we had a winner for the bracket, our Love Letters from the Left bracket. And I think there was some confusion over what exactly this was. The whole thing was comments in the bracket that people who are left-wingers would send to us, would email us, would text us. I mean, they were insults, of course, or post about us, and we always find them humorous, and so we did a bracket. And first off, the individual who won the $250 gift card from Garrison Roofing and Guttering was Randy in Ozark.
Oh,
and,
Randy.
Yep, good job, Randy. And so that was because he participated. The winner of the gift card, Randy didn't win because he picked the correct phrase or love letter, if you will, but it was random. And anyone who participated had their name in the drawing. The winning comment was the one that called me a Nazi. I forgot exactly what it was.
Oh,
verbatim.
yeah, it's something like, I wonder what Nazi Nick is going to say today.
Yeah. That was the big winner. It was one of our favorites, but it beat out in the final round, I hope your plane crashes, which was a comment that was sent in before we went on our Great Escape, which all right, so I think maybe tomorrow we'll be announcing and opening to the public the Great Escape. Can't say for 100% certainty. I know that's frustrating, but I just try to keep you guys in the loop on that. As long as one final thing gets approved, which I think is somewhat irrelevant, but we'll see. Then hopefully tomorrow around 7:30 we'll be able to announce it. That being said, if you have gone on a past trip, you have the access to reserve your slot now ahead of time before it becomes open to the public, and you can do that by contacting Cam at Travel Group, the Travel Group. You can do that anytime this morning, and she'll go ahead and get you set up. I'm sure you don't know the number offhand, do you?
I don't. But
Okay.
You know what? Whenever we do find out for sure if Cam is going to be on, I'll make sure to post on our social media at
Okay.
1041 Nick Reed.
We've got audio of Joe Biden coming up as usual. Yes. I don't understand why people have him come speak. I just don't, unless you are looking to watch a train wreck, potentially.
You don't feel like he's enlightening?
Yeah, not quite. Is in Chicago. Is the ACRD? I don't even know what that is. I now the speculation as to why he's doing it is he needs money. Obviously, he's no longer. Amazingly enough, the oligarchs from China and Russia and Bulgaria and Belarus and Ukraine and all of these different places in which his family was having millions and millions of dollars funneled into numerous bank accounts through these LLCs. We were told that that wasn't to buy influence, but amazingly enough, I'm sure that it's no surprise that they've stopped doing that. I wonder why. Why all of a sudden they're no longer paying his family members for unnamed services. It's just a weird coincidence, I'm sure.
ACRD stands for Advocates, Counselors, and Representatives for the Disabled.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe he wasn't actually supposed to be a speaker as much as just a central theme for that particular event. We will have some of that audio coming up. And I want to talk about the latest buzzword that the Democrats are using in order to try to scare Americans into believing Trump is a crazed dictator, and that is disappeared. He's disappearing people. Now, I have yet to even see anyone give an example of someone who has disappeared. They are at the same time focusing on this MS-13 gang member that was deported back to his home country of El Salvador. This is their latest cause. This is what they're focusing on. But what they're trying to do is conflate, I guess, that with, quote, disappearing. That's not what that means. Disappearing, if you are disappeared by your government, for example, that means that all of a sudden one day you disappear. The government's like, well, we don't know who the guy is. Nobody knows where the person is. There was no clue that was coming. Everyone knows exactly. This particular MS-13 gang member has been ordered deported in the past, years and years ago. This is a long, ongoing, very public process. Everyone knows exactly where he is. In fact, that's why the left is so upset, because he's been put in a mean jail in El Salvador. So that's not really disappeared. If you know exactly that someone was going to be transferred or deported, you knew exactly where they were going to be deported, and then upon deportation, you know exactly where they are. That's kind of the opposite of disappeared. Like the entire process was totally out in the open. You may have disagreed with it, but that's not disappearing someone any more than if I get arrested for embezzlement and I go on trial and it's very high profile and it's in the news, and then I'm ordered to go to jail, and then I'm taken to jail, and maybe they put me in the wrong jail on accident, and there's a big kerfuffle over where it is that I go to jail. That's not disappearing me, okay? But this is the new buzzword that is being used by the left. Greg Gutfeld had great commentary on this yesterday, and there is a degree of getting lost in the forest for the trees. There is so much talk about this guy's case and MS-13 and how many judges and what the Supreme Court said. And Greg Gutfeld, and I'll play the audio from the 5 yesterday, he's like, I don't even care about any of that stuff anymore. Don't care. I don't even remember the guy's name. He's here illegally. He shouldn't be here. That is all that matters. He should be gone. I don't care if judges have said he's MS-13. I don't care if that is all irrelevant to me. He just needs to be gone because he was in the country illegally. We've got traffic coming up, weather as well. Right now, the latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today it'll be sunny and breezy. We'll see a slight chance of rain this evening with a high near 74. Tonight a chance for showers and thunderstorms mainly after 1 a.m. with a low around 56. For your Thursday, mostly sunny with a high near 82. And looking ahead to Friday, partly sunny with a high near 81.
Hunter Hardscapes and Outdoor, turning your own home into an outdoor oasis. It's one of the reasons so often people leave the home. It is to enjoy the outdoors, to be able to relax. If you go to oftentimes a resort, part of it, you find the nice outdoor area and you sit around, relax with friends. They've got the built-in fire pits that are nice to sit around. Well, you can have that in your own home and just as, if not more professionally done than you get at the resorts. This is not DIY. This is not your standard hardscape landscape deal. These are the people that customize and they order the products because they're premier products. You can't buy them yourselves. It's not the sort of thing. And listen, I get it, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, but a lot of times you hire these people that do landscaping, hardscaping, and then they go to the big box store to buy the supplies, and then they utilize that in order to build your project. That's not how it works with Hunter Hardscapes and Outdoor. They customize design, not just based off your space, your outdoor living area, but also your usage. I know for me, that was a big thing in the designing of mine, particularly when it comes to the fact that not only do I have a Traeger, but I have been waiting for an outdoor area so that I can expand and also have a Blackstone. So that was incorporated into the designing along with an in-ground fire pit because of our usage, and that's how they operate. And so it may take a little bit longer than it does with the standard folks to have that level of your outdoor oasis created. Just go to hunterhardscapes.com. You can also find them, at KSGF.com under Nick's endorsements. I wanted to play Greg Gutfeld here. He was on the 5 yesterday, and because I think what he says resonates with a lot of people, but it also almost resets the conversation about the illegal immigration issue. And we watch that for whatever reason, the Democrats, they really love rallying around and turning criminals and gang members and, people that aren't the best into these icons, these heroes, these people that we're supposed to rally around. And they draw you into these nuanced conversations. So the battle becomes not about the simple reality of this person is in the country illegally, has been ordered to be deported, and so that's it. But instead, well, about this court case and then that court case, and well, you can't prove that he's actually a member of MS-13 and this and that, and it's getting lost in the forest for the trees. And I think Greg Gutfeld's overall position here on the 5 last night is a good reset that in reality, all of that is ultimately irrelevant.
I don't care. I honestly don't care. Do you not? I bet the viewers at home feel this narrative at work. What is strange about this story? What is the strange thing about this story? The majority of Americans favor deportation of illegals, especially those who are criminals, but they favor deportation of illegal. The last, 8 days, 7 days has been around about one person. Yep. One person. I don't even know his name. I don't care. I don't care. If he's here illegal, he's got to go. We are not responsible for the faulty process that allowed him to be here before. Is he a terrorist? Is he not a terrorist? I don't care. Let me give you an analogy. This will be good for you because you like sports. You walk down your box seats. There's somebody sitting in your seat. And you go, why is this guy sitting in my seat? And they go, well, he's not supposed to be there. But he's a family man. He's got a job. It's like, yeah, but that's not on me. That's my seat. Don't you have a process for having him leave that seat? Yes, we do. Can he go back to his seat? Why doesn't he go back to his seat? It's not my concern where that seat is. He's got to go. Yes, but did you know he's been trying really hard to be a good citizen? He's really quiet. He's not making. No, you don't understand. He's got to go. Now, we knew that this process wouldn't be easy. Yeah. It was really easy for Democrats to open the floodgates and be seen as the heroes. Look how compassionate we are. It's always going to be harder to send them back. And you're going to be treated like a villain every single step of the way because adults fix the problems that children's cause. And sometimes the adults have to do big stuff to fix the big problems that were caused by Democrats who, in this case, are the children. As for this, why are they talking about this disappear fear? It's because the bat signal went up. Last week it was chaos. Now it's disappear fear. You put it on the mountain of imaginary concerns, along with paper straws, the climate apocalypse, Russian collusion, white supremacy, Musk is a Nazi. This is what I mean when you can feel the narrative. You can feel it. You go like, oh, now I understand this. This whole thing, this guy is nothing more than a tool that is being used to subvert the needs and concerns of the American public. This is why they're latching onto it. You mentioned how the deportation, in a way, has the same issues as the invasion. It's a mirror. Biden opened the border, millions came in, and surely murderers and rapists were part of that. Now we're deporting hundreds of thousands, and surely one or two might not be criminal. However, compare the error. In one of these errors, Americans don't die. At worst, a guy gets sent to a country he doesn't want to go to. You know what? I can live with that.
Into a prison camp, not just out into the wild.
Look, I'm sorry, Jessica. I understand your concern, but I refuse to care about one person who's an illegal alien when the mental shelf space that I have is now reserved for victims of crime, which I've been talking about for years. This manufactured narrative family man, father of three, coming from the media, who with the same intensity talked about having children was bad for the climate, are now telling us that when you have children, you are now a pillar of the community. If that guy was a white American citizen, they would just call him a MAGA extremist. But he's an illegal alien and he has kids, and now he's the spirit of the community. He's a good guy.
That's Greg Gutfeld on The Five yesterday, and you heard Jessica Tarlov, of course, and she's the Democrat there on the panel, and she rotates in and out with Harold Ford Jr. And, but he was sent to a prison. The other aspect of this that I've noted that gets left out, his entire defense for not being deported was because he felt or feared he was going to be targeted by gangs because he is a rival gang member. That's the entire premise of his humanitarian request to not be deported, that he was going to be targeted by the Aragua gang because he's MS-13. So while they run around with these headlines calling him a Maryland man, Maryland dad, a father from Maryland, and they continue this argument that, well, there's no proof that he's a member of the gang or MS-13. His defense is that he is a member of MS-13. But back to Greg Gutfeld's point, what difference does that even make? When it comes to the ultimate issue here, this is someone who is in the country illegally. He drew a couple of analogies, but I'd say another one is if you come home from kid's soccer game and there's a stranger in your home, and, maybe they're just sitting there eating popcorn, watching television, sitting on the couch. And you say, you need to leave. And they decide, no, I think I'll stay here. And you call the police. The expectation is that they are removed from your home. Does it matter what their background is? Does it matter if that is a father of two? Does it matter if that person is a gang member or an upstanding member of society? That's irrelevant. They're in your home illegally, so they need to go. And it's the same for every one of these individuals. It isn't as if we don't allow people from other countries to come here legally. It is done all the time. If we did not allow people to come to if there was no pathway to citizenship, if there was no official way to apply for asylum or to come to the United States as a refugee, you could at least entertain the argument that, well, they had no other choice because they needed to get here desperately and there was no other way. The problem is there is another way, and hundreds of thousands of people across the globe take it every single year, specifically when it comes to citizenship, and right here in Springfield, usually 2 or 3 times a year, a number of those people are sworn in as U.S. citizens because they took the legal pathway. And those are the people that we should welcome, and those are the people whose faces we should not kick dirt in by allowing those who come into the country illegally, shortcutting it, and then somehow rewarding them and then making them out to be martyrs or these beacons of virtue. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. Traffic in a moment. Greg Gutfeld had made another point in the mirror image of how illegal immigration is treated by the left. And he referenced the fact that whenever you, or Trump, for example, would talk about with the millions of illegals invited into this country, you know that some of them are going to be murderers and rapists, obviously. Child molesters, sex traffickers. We know over 300,000 kids. The Biden administration admitted, we don't know where they are. They got sold into sex slavery here in the U.S. What are you going to do? The narrative of the left, anytime reality would surface, and another American, usually a young woman, is brutally raped and murdered by somebody in this country illegally, the refrain is always, well, that's rare. You know, I mean, not all are that way. I mean, that's just, you cannot base policy simply because of the sinful deeds of one individual. So in an instance in which you have illegals welcomed into the country and then they murder or rape innocent civilians, we're told that just because of a few bad apples or a few bad examples, that doesn't mean that we need to hyper-focus on that. Yet whenever there is a rare example of somebody being deported to a country that they weren't supposed to be deported to, all of a sudden that becomes the single most important case. That becomes the definition of the deportation policies. So when the person is a murderer, we are supposed to ignore that. When the result of the mistake, the error in immigration policy results in the tortured death of a young girl or an innocent woman, we're supposed to ignore that because, hey, those things happen, and you can't use that to define that immigration policy of open borders. But if an individual isn't killed or anything, but gets deported to the wrong country on accident, that, however, is supposed to be the definition of everything that is immigration policy. A traffic update now. I'm Nick Reed.
Springfield's Talk 1041, your first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. Today it'll be sunny and breezy. We'll see a slight chance of rain this evening with a high near 74. Tonight, a chance for showers and thunderstorms mainly after 1 a.m. with a low around 56. For your Thursday, mostly sunny with a high near 82. And looking ahead to Friday, we'll see partly sunny skies with a high near 81.
Bukele, he knew to wear a jacket to the Oval Office yesterday.
That's right.
he knew how to do it. I was having a conversation, which is a conversation many of you have probably had with either friends or they just talk about things that are going on in their life, and it was a discussion about their parents and a will, and they were sort of laughing about there's not really anything to leave or anything other than the house, and so we were talking about how there are so many different ways for the government to screw you when you get left something like that. And a lot of people think there's this clear, they can just sell it to you for $1 and then you pay the taxes. And I think it varies from state to state, but ultimately the point is that's why you have to have someone like Ozarks Elder Law in your corner. This is what they know how to do. I've heard story after story after story, as you may have as well, of people that just thought this is going to be a simple process and I don't have to worry about government coming in and take advantage of this time in our life. But it's government. They can do what they want and when they want. And they are going to get the absolute most out of you and your tragedy, the death in your family as they possibly can. And the people at Ozarks Elder Law are there to make sure that you are as protected as possible. And they keep up with the updates in the law and the ever-changing, court cases that might set precedent and so forth, so that you are best protected. So whether that is planning for the future when it comes to your parents or grandparents or maybe yourself, and you don't want to put your kids in that situation, in your mind you think, well, they'll just have this house and, they'll pay property taxes at the end of the year, but that's it. Don't leave them in dire straits. Ozarks Elder Law. You can find them at ozarkselderlaw.com and, of course, ksgf.com under Nick's endorsements. There's a current plea from PBS stations. Deadline has a story. PBS stations call federal funds irreplaceable and essential as Trump administration prepares to slash public media coins. Slash it. This is a demonstration of the word game and the narrative game that gets played by media outlets that get tax dollars from us. And that is to, on one hand, when people complain about their paycheck being taken in order to subsidize media outlets, those media outlets dismiss it as it's really not that much money. We've heard this over and over again when there are calls for the cutting off of funding, that really it's not that much. It's not even a drop in the bucket. People are trying to overplay this in order to stir emotions and to make people angry and feel as if, that they shouldn't have to foot the bill for these media outlets like PBS and NPR specifically. But then the moment that less than drop in the bucket is potentially going to go away, all of a sudden we hear how valuable it is, how it is absolutely essential. We hear about the massive amounts of money. It's over $500 million this past year that they received. Over $500 million. Now, to Greg Gutfeld's point in the previous segment regarding illegal immigration, in which he was talking about, I don't care about all these details. I don't care about whether or not he was officially found a gang member, talking about the Maryland man. I don't care. The fact is, ultimately, it all boils down to the fact that he is not in this country legally, and so he should be gone. That's it. That approach, I think, is also one that needs to have greater focus when it comes to funding for media outlets, PBS and NPR. And that is, they just shouldn't get it. Why should these media outlets? KSGF doesn't get taxpayer dollars. Color 10 doesn't get taxpayer dollars. KY3 doesn't get taxpayer dollars. KTTS doesn't get taxpayer dollars. We can go down the list of every other single radio and TV station in the entire country. Yet in virtually every major market, you have NPR, you have PBS, and they act as if somehow they're entitled to it. Why are you entitled to it, but we're not? There were congressional hearings a couple of weeks ago, and as predicted, it focused around Democrats talking about freedom of speech, and as if that means like your freedom of speech is being taken away if the government's not forcing people to pay you. That's their position. And Republicans spent their time pointing out that PBS and NPR are just propaganda mouthpieces for the left. And, and they demonstrated that through their questioning and through facts, of course. And not only that, but the gaslighting of these two institutions, in which you have the head of NPR sitting there talking about, we're completely unbiased. And yet, in their, I think it was Ted Cruz pointed out that in their national newsroom of the 73 news folks, 68 of them were registered Democrats and the rest were unaffiliated or something absurd like that. I mean, not a single Republican. So it is factual that it is a political institution that you and I are forced to pay for in order to spread Democrat propaganda. That is factual. But at the same time, when it comes to the funding issue, it's irrelevant. I don't care if they factually demonstrate themselves to be the most unbiased news sources in existence. They're not entitled, nor should they receive any of my money. If we lived in a country where there was somehow a desert of information regarding things that are going on in the world, there was nowhere that people had the ability to find out what's going on with Donald Trump, find out what's going on with the local city council, find out what's going on in Jefferson City, then you could at least argue, hey, people have no way of finding out what's going on in the news. The only option that exists is if we use your tax dollars to prop up these different media outlets, PBS and NPR. But that isn't the case. Never in the history of not just this country, but mankind, has there ever been an overflow of information to the degree that it exists today. In fact, some people would argue that there's too much of it. So this idea that we need to be funding it's crazy. We need to break away from this need, and I think a lot of conservatives feel this instinct that we have to prove that they haven't earned it, or we have to prove that NPR and PBS are not serving the public good because they are left-wing propagandists. But that isn't needed. We don't have to prove that. It doesn't matter. They don't need the money. They don't deserve the money. There is nothing that is rationally explained as a need to take specifically that national radio entity and that national television entity and prop them up with taxpayer dollars. Incidentally, just from a business standpoint, to some degree, what they're acknowledging is they don't even have the ability to run a television network or run a radio network without being subsidized. All of the other entities, and we're included in this, we're a business. And if we fail to provide a service that is of a satisfactory level to the listeners, that then in turn, and without getting too far into the weeds, we provide a product that is valuable enough to the community, that enough people in the community listen, that then area businesses pay in order to get in front of that audience. And that's where the advertising dollars come from. That's the whole concept of how it works. You provide a service that is valuable enough that an audience comes and they want to come and get your information, whether that is TV or it is radio. And if you do that successfully, then there is an audience there. And so a local business says, hey, wow, you have an audience. These are potential customers. I would like to have access to them. And say, okay, you can. Here's the fee in order to do so. And then those people in turn learn about the business, if the messaging is good, if the product is something or the service that the customer wants or the listener wants, then they go in there, they spend their money, and everybody wins, right? Why is NPR and PBS, why do we accept this, this, I guess, premise that they are incapable of providing a service to the community that is valuable enough for them to be self-sustained? This is another aspect of that entire relationship that needs to be discussed. The entire point, we're told that they are so desperately needed, is because they provide such a valuable service to the community. Well, if that is the case, then they can be self-sustained. And if they are not self-sustainable, then they are not, by definition, providing a service to the community, because that means that the community isn't wanting whatever it is that they're providing. And if the community doesn't feel at large, or even to enough degree that they can survive financially, that this is an entity that is providing anything I want or need, then they're not providing a service to the community. So it's sort of a neat little formula, because the fact that they apparently claim in order to continue to exist, they need to be subsidized, demonstrates that by their own admission, they're not providing a service to the community, because if they were, they wouldn't have to have help to prop themselves up. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. Well, Sarah tells me PETA was protesting in Springfield yesterday.
They were. They were at Pickleman's, and they were also at the Honey Baked Ham Company.
They're like, what did we do? I don't know why, in my mind, especially honey baked ham. Honey baked ham just seems so wholesome. I don't know why that is. You know what I mean? Like they seem, not that Pickleman seems like a controversial, unwholesome place, but Honey Baked Ham, you just think of the holidays and the family coming in there. I could just seem like, what did we do? So this was because, I guess, animals that are
Yes, so
eaten.
they had a Hell on Wheels, which is PETA's hyper-realistic pig transport truck, and they have loudspeakers with actual recorded sounds of animals' panic screams, and they said that they had a subliminal message every 10 seconds suggesting that people go vegan. The reason they did this is because Easter is all about celebrating life, yet we celebrate it with holiday hams that come from pigs who suffer a living death in filthy sheds.
Don't forget lambs.
Yeah, they didn't mention anything about that.
Brisket sometimes. I think last Easter I smoked a brisket as well. And then I do pork belly. I wonder why they chose those two places.
I don't know.
Maybe
Let me
because of
see.
high traffic. They're both at intersections. Maybe that's why, because, you know, the thing about, I'm all about effectiveness. And I just don't believe that anything like that is actually going to change anybody's habits. If anything, I think that it may draw people towards just almost to be, you know how some people are, especially younger people. They're like, well, I'm going to go in there and get myself a ham sandwich now just to show them. I mean, I don't imagine to any real significant degree, but it wouldn't surprise me if they actually didn't slaughter and torture the pigs themselves in order to get the audio. And I say that because PETA has been the subject of numerous lawsuits. They've had to pay out because they actually, you know, the euthanasia rate of PETA? PETA is essentially the architect of pet holocaust. The amount of animals that they slaughter, they have this sort of weird, almost a cult-like mentality that if an animal isn't going to live by a standard that they feel is appropriate, they think they're better off dead. I'm not talking about diseased animals. I'm not talking about some, 21-year-old dog that's blind and can't hear and is being kept alive well beyond its years. I'm talking about otherwise normal animals that no kill shelters would take in and take care of, looking to try to find them a family. They don't bother to do that. Do you notice you don't see anytime there is any sort of here in Springfield, outside of PetSmart or any of these places where on the weekend there will be a pet adoption event? You notice PETA's never putting those on? They just execute them. They kill them. In fact, there was a story in the Washington Post that back in 2015, PETA euthanized more than 80% of the animals in its care the year prior. And in, what year was it here? I pulled up a couple of different stories because of this. I think it was Virginia or West Virginia actually they passed a law. Okay, here, this is the Washington Post story. PETA euthanized more than 80% of the animals in its care last year, a rate so shockingly high that Virginia lawmakers passed a bill in February nearly unanimously to define a private animal shelter as a place where the primary mission is to find permanent homes for animals in this life, not send them on to the next. And it's gotten so bad, PETA has had to post blog post why we euthanize. So there's no... it's just crazy to me that a so-called pet compassionate or animal compassionate organization that is arguably the most high profile in this country is the one in which an animal is most likely to meet its demise, and oftentimes cruelly. And then they have the audacity to go around and lecture people on how they, eating animals. It's another demonstration that people on the left portray themselves as supporting a particular cause or people, or in this instance, creature, yet they are actually the greatest danger to the people they claim that they're trying to help. Traffic update, I'm Nick Reed. anytime there's a talk about ending the subsidizing of PBS, they always go straight to, Big Bird. And this was something when Mitt Romney was running for president. I remember accusations that Republicans were going to kill Big Bird. Someone texted in, PBS sold the licensing of Sesame Street for decades and made hundreds of millions, if not billions. Did the taxpayers get a dividend? Now, I don't know how much, but, I mean, the juxtapositioning, and some of you will remember that Mitt Romney, that campaign, and Mitt Romney would have never, ever, ever. Mitt Romney's a big government guy. He would have never, as president, even if there was an attempt congressionally to cut off funding for PBS, he would have put a stop to it. Nonetheless, he was accused of plotting to kill off Sesame Street. And then after that election came this headline: Sesame Street deal, a sad day for public broadcasting supporters. Through a deal with HBO, the beloved children's television show, which champions fairness and equality, will be paywalled. New episodes available first to paying HBO subscribers. So these people that went on and on about the sacred nature of having Sesame Street untainted by capitalism so children could enjoy it for free, turn around and sold it for cash. We've got news coming up in 60 seconds. Pyramid Roofing Company, talk and text line 447 KSGF. I'm Nick Reed. Springfield's Talk 104.1. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show. Friday is Good Friday. We will be at Scramblers. I know for a lot of folks, it is a day off. We're actually going to, and we've done this the last couple of years, take the following Monday off. We will have Best Of, correct?
That is correct.
Correct, Mundo. So there will be programming. It's a great time if you missed any of the previous shows. Be able to catch up on it. We do that so we can still be out at Scramblers, and it's oftentimes because you have a holiday on a Friday that people are off. Maybe they'll, instead of going to work, they'll go eat, and so we want to be sure to be out there for Scramblers and help assist them in any way that we can. Make sure that you all know that they're open. Our Friday Roadshow, of course, is sponsored by Shirley's Heating and Air, so that will be this Friday. I think it's supposed to rain this weekend?
Yes,
possibly.
it is.
All right, we'll have that weather coming up here in just a couple of moments. I want a great homeloan.com if you have any home loan needs. In fact, this Friday, either Anthony or Alex should be out there with us from iwantagreathomeloan.com, out at Scramblers, that is. Use them for information. I cannot stress that enough. I know that we're accustomed to, particularly when it comes to home loans, things just gotten bigger, and the big banks and the big institutions and do it online. And really the only interest that they have is getting your information, your debt to income ratio, and your social security number so they can test the credit score and then say, all right, here's your offer. This is what we can do for you. And that is the beginning of the relationship. It's once the transactional part begins so that they can, make money. They are a business, right? But the Carrickers, their approach is one of start with information, start with questions, use them for that. Their first contact with you doesn't need to be after you've made the decision, but when you've decided that you need to start gathering information to decide whether or not you want to make the decision. So whether it's refinancing, it's home loans, it is reverse mortgages, utilize them as sources for info. All their contact info is at iwantagreathomeloan.com, because you do. In a story that can be called nothing other than delicious, federal agency referring New York Attorney General Letitia James to DOJ for prosecution for alleged mortgage fraud. Federal government's main housing loan agency has referred New York Attorney General Letitia James, this is John Solomon's Just the News, a longtime nemesis of President Donald Trump, to the U.S. Justice Department for possible prosecution over alleged mortgage fraud, according to a letter obtained by Just the News. William J. Pulte, the director of the U.S. Federal Housing Finance Agency, made the referral Monday to Attorney General Pam Bondi and her deputy Todd Blanche, and attached evidence, he said, corroborated earlier media reports alleging irregularities in a series of loans James obtained, including for a property in Virginia. Pulte writing, in the course of exercising U.S. federal housing authority under the Federal Housing Enterprise Financial Safety and Soundness Act of 1992, U.S. federal housing has identified matters that are appropriate for referral to the U.S. Department of Justice for consideration of criminal prosecution. Based on the media reports, Ms. Letitia James has, in multiple instances, falsified bank documents and property records to acquire government-backed assistance and loans and more favorable loan terms. This has potentially included falsifying resident status for a Norfolk, Virginia-based home in order to secure a lower payment rate, and misrepresenting property descriptions to meet stringent requirements for government-backed loans and government assistance. The referral cites two transactions believed to be potentially fraudulent. In the first, Letitia James purchased a property in Norfolk, Virginia 2 years ago, claiming it was her primary residence, even though she was serving full-time in New York as the Attorney General. In the second instance, James was accused of understating the number of housing units in the property she owned in Brooklyn in an apparent attempt to get it treated with a better mortgage rate. Quote, it appears that Ms. James may have listed the Brooklyn, New York property as 4 units instead of 5 units in order to meet the conforming loan requirements and thus receive better interest rates. Ms. James also appears to have used the same falsification in order to receive mortgage assistance through a program known as Home Assistance Modification Program. Ms. James, for both properties listed above, appears to have falsified records in order to meet certain lending requirements and receive favorable loan terms. James isn't the first prominent Democrat to face accusations of mortgage fraud. A federal jury in 2024 convicted former Baltimore City Attorney General Marilyn Mosby on a charge she falsified a mortgage application for a Florida property purchased while serving as Maryland prosecutor. But James is by far the most prominent Trump nemesis to face potential federal investigation, of course. Now, and what's not listed in this Just the News piece, but in others, that part of the alleged fraud is that she also, for reasons of obtaining a more favorable mortgage interest rate, listed her own father as her husband. That according to a number of reports as well. Letitia James, of course, one of the reasons she went after Trump was to claim that he was fraudulent when it came to presenting the value of Mar-a-Lago for loan purposes, you may recall. Now, that was an instance in which no one complained, no one was a victim, and there was no falsification of records or even allegations of it. They just claimed, now, we decided that Mar-a-Lago's not worth as much as Trump said it was. Now, by Trump saying it wasn't Trump who did the evaluation. Of course, the lender is the one that does the evaluation. So, I mean, that whole insane case was total lunacy, but it's so perfect that the Attorney General, who ran on a campaign of getting Trump on something, I mean, that was her campaign platform. You just elect me, I'll figure out a way to get Trump. And then decided Mar-a-Lago wasn't worth what he said it was, and so that's why she went after him. Well, here, the allegations are very specific, provable, if true, instances of outright fraud in which people have gone to prison for. It will be interesting to see how this plays out. It can go one of two ways. And I suppose a little bit of both. But on one hand, you can expect potentially Democrats in the media to claim that this is Trump going after political opposition, which of course is laughable because Letitia James campaigned on going after political opposition. But that won't stop them if that's the tactic they decide to take, that this is all political and this Trump is a dictator. Or they will decide to cut their losses. It's not worth fighting because it's New York, so whomever replaces her is simply going to be another Democrat anyhow. And at the same time, this is going to be, and this is the problem Democrats face when they live in a one-party system, one-party rule state or city. They aren't ever really fully protected because the potential of them going away, whether it's to prison or losing their seat because of corruption, is something that is more realistic, because when Democrats know that that person will simply be replaced by another Democrat, then the other Democrats get very, very, they start licking their chops. Because I guarantee you, with this story right now, there are a number of Democrats who want to be attorney general that are thinking, this could be my chance. This could be my opportunity. And so there's a very good, there's a good chance here that she will not be defended, because Democrats will see it as, it doesn't matter whether she's out of there or not, because another Democrat is going to replace her, and so why bother to defend her? Plus, she's kind of annoying and a distraction anyhow. We'll see which way it goes. Latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see sunny skies. It'll be a breezy one, and there's also a slight chance for rain this evening with a high near 74. Tonight, a chance of showers and thunderstorms after 1 a.m. with a low around 56. For your Thursday, mostly sunny with a high near 82. And looking at Friday, we'll see partly sunny skies with a high near 81.
Hey everyone, it's Sarah Myers.
Hey everyone, that's me. The Pyramid Roofing Company. Now, we do have severe weather that's probably going to roll into the Ozarks later this week, sometime late Thursday, Friday. And if you notice any type of issues with your roof, whether you've got yellowing on your ceiling, full-blown leaks, maybe your gutters just can't keep up with the rain, I highly recommend Josh and his team over at the Pyramid Roofing Company. Now, the Pyramid team, they offer free roof inspections, and they also offer emergency tarping services as well. So if you do need to utilize those services, just remember, give Josh and the Pyramid Roofing Company team a call today. And of course, you can find all of the contact information for the Pyramid Roofing Company under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at KSGF.com.
Old Joe
Man,
making an appearance in Chi-Town.
did you see the photos?
I saw some video.
Goodness gracious. He looks rough.
It's just I guess he needs money. Obviously, the money flowing from the oligarchs of China and Russia and Ukraine and those other countries have dried up amazingly, and coincidentally, right around the time that he can no longer do anything for him. It's almost as if they were buying access. I know that that's crazy, and of course, we'd been told there was absolutely no evidence of that whatsoever. They couldn't tell us what he was selling, or what Hunter, was selling on Joe's behalf, or the other 11 family members. That explanation was never given. Now, Claire McCaskill, of course, explained to us that she was simply, or that he was simply being a good dad who loves his family, and that's what that was all about. Yeah, that's not the best photo of old Joe. It looks like That looks like he got something stuck in his tooth and he's trying to suck it out. You know,
No, they all look like that. That's
sucking a tooth. That's something that somebody his age does, and you know, you've seen that happen.
There
Have
you
you
go.
ever
For the people
stared?
on YouTube Live. Do what?
You know, how people they get to a certain age, they start sucking on their tooth. Isn't that what it looks like he's doing there?
Yeah, kind of a little bit. But no, all of the photos look like that.
This was in Chi-Town, and he was addressing the National Conference of Advocates, Counselors, and Representatives for the Disabled, and I still don't know that actually he wasn't supposed to be, I don't know, the subject matter as much as the keynote speaker. But nonetheless, he got up to the podium, and he talked about a couple of different things, and here he is talking about the importance of dignity. Okay, here we go. Get that audio for you.
That's what the legislation's about. It's about dignity. Simple dignity. Everyone deserves to be treated with dignity. Regardless of their standing, regardless of the economic situation, regardless of who they are. Making sure that more than 60 million Americans who are living with disabilities are treated with dignity is who we are as Americans. That's what it's about. I mean it. Dignity at work, at school, in their communities, in every corner of American life.
All right, so he's talking about dignity there. We got the old man yelling thing again, so it's nice to hear that come back.
I literally wrote that down.
Old man yelling.
Also, I think it's funny that he's lecturing us to treat one another with dignity.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Is this not the guy who referred to people who didn't support him as garbage?
Exactly.
That was another fantastic turning point in that campaign. I almost forgot Trump riding that garbage truck and showing up. And this is the guy that labeled tens of millions, called them garbage. Now, arguably, that's pretty benign compared to semi-fascist, which is something else that he called people who didn't vote for him, or Nazis, or Trump is a dictator, racist, gonna bring back Jim Crow 2.0. Are you kidding me? You're gonna lecture us about dignity? Everybody deserves dignity, well, except those of us who don't. What about Jewish students on college campuses while left-wing activists run them off of campus or call for them to, be eliminated, to finish what Hitler started, some of them being assaulted? I mean, you've got Harvard that is turning down a couple of $1 billion so that they can continue to have, foster anti-Semitism on their campus. They would rather give up that money than crack down on anti-Semitism. Biden, he's going to lecture us about dignity as Americans? What about girls that want to be able to, a 12, 13-year-old girl take a shower after a track meet without being forced to take one with a guy who self-identifies as a girl? Is that the dignity you're talking about? What a piece of work. Now, he is senile, so at the same time, can you really hold him to account for what it is that he said? But that audience applauding him, this is the sick gaslighting of the left. And it actually, I don't think it is gaslighting, because gaslighting is a deliberate attempt to make somebody think that they're crazy because you're presenting what you say as reality versus what they know is reality. And so they're like, wait a minute, am I the crazy one? I think that the people on the left believe that they're virtuous. In their minds, they can be anti-Semitic and they're still all for equality. In their minds, they can force a young girl, one that perhaps is even a former victim of sexual assault, to take a shower with a boy, and they still support dignity and equality. They can call Americans that disagree with them garbage, but they're still treating people with dignity. I think in their minds, that's how twisted the left has become, because by default, everything they do is virtuous. And it is virtuous because by default, they are the good ones. They are the light. They are the truth. That's the benefit of tribalism, and that is the benefit of disconnecting oneself from the truths of what is good and bad, the truths of what is moral, and the truth as to what is going on in the world. You just deem yourself good, and that's all that matters. You can do whatever you want, and it is good because you are good. And whatever the people that you don't like, let's say, Trump and his supporters, people that don't vote for you, it doesn't matter what they do. It is bad. Because what they're doing isn't what matters. It is who's doing it. And because Donald Trump is evil and a dictator and a Nazi, and all of his supporters are Nazi sympathizers, by default, anything they do is wrong and bad. And that is the world that they live in. And that's how it is that they can sit there and applaud somebody like Joe Biden, who has been anything but dignified. I mean, just in the White House itself, whether it's cocaine or taking tens of millions of dollars from foreign countries, funneling through LLCs, pardoning your own son after you swore you wouldn't do it, having a topless transgender run around the White House lawn with kids. But they are the good ones. So by default, all of those things are dignified. And anyone who, of course, is opposed to those things is bad. Because they're bad. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. Not just a couple of weeks away from the big grand open house, Pinnaker Honda. If you drive by, I drove by again yesterday. I kind of like to go by and peek at the progress they're making for this massive renovation. And, they're open. They are fully functional. In fact, right now, 0.99% interest rate available on select certified pre-owned Hondas. These are amazing interest rates, especially for pre-owned vehicles. It's not the most unheard of thing to have an incredible interest rate for a brand new vehicle. They want to incentivize you to buy those. But usually you're talking about, obviously, with a pre-owned vehicle, a much higher interest rate. 0.99%. Certified pre-owned vehicles at Pinnaker Honda. Honda Ridgeline, Passport, and Odyssey, made exclusively, not just in US of A, but Red State, Alabama. So for folks that like to buy USA, 100% with the Ridgeline, Passport, and Odyssey. The Ridgeline, Passport, and Odyssey, or the Accord and the Pilot, also they fall in the top 15 American-made models. So no need to wait until the big grand opening. They're going to have food trucks, and they're going to have T-shirts and, all sorts of big fun activities on the 29th. But you can swing by today if you'd like. Or, frankly, every Friday they actually have food trucks out there. So great time to swing by and check out some of those incredible deals, particularly the 0.99% interest rate on certified pre-owned Hondas. That is Pinnaker Honda, South Campbell, just south of Walnut Lawn. Coming up, more Joe Biden yesterday as he slurs, he stammers, he mumbles, and he yells, making an appearance which can only be called a gift to the Republicans because Anytime Joe Biden is back out there, it's a reminder of how the Democrats lied to the American people, telling them that this is the sharpest guy in the room at any given time.
Springfield's Talk 1041, your first alert forecast from Ozark's first meteorologist, Tom Schmidt, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. Today, it'll be sunny and breezy with a slight chance of rain this evening with a high near 74. Tonight, a chance of showers and thunderstorms mainly after 1 a.m. with a low around 56. For your Thursday, mostly sunny with a high near 82. And looking ahead to Friday, we'll see partly sunny skies with a high near 81.
Joe Biden making an appearance yesterday lecturing Americans about the need for dignity and how everyone deserves it. Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line. Sleepy Joe wants the guys to shower with the girls because he could shower with his daughter. Just wants equity. Yes, this according to his own daughter. For those that don't know, she wrote in her diary as part of her therapy, her rehabilitation for drug abuse that she attributed to sexual abuse, wrote in her diary that would be found and released that her dad would crawl into the shower with her at an inappropriate age for both of them. So I suppose that may also be a version of dignity of which he spoke. This was in Chicago yesterday at an event for the disabled, and specifically it's a conference of advocates, counselors, and representatives for the disabled. And, of course, you can't have an appearance of Joe Biden without story time with Joe.
I remember pulling into the parking lot, and I had never seen hardly any black people in Scranton at the time I was only going in the fourth grade. And I remember seeing the kids going by at the time called colored kids on a bus going by. They never turned right to go to Claymont High School. I wondered why. Asked my mom, why? So in Delaware, they're not allowed to go to school, in public school, with white kids, honey. That sparked my sense of outrage as a kid.
All right, so Joe Biden. Now, let's not forget, he also said when he was a kid, Scranton was a place that homosexual men openly made out in public. Remember that story? He talked about being with his dad at a park and seeing two gay men kiss each other, and his dad explained to him that that's love or something, which I'm sure totally legitimate and true story. But so few blacks that Joe Biden had never seen what he also refers to as colored kids. And he saw them and his at such a fourth grade. That's when his quest for equality began, because he was outraged at the fact that there was no integration, that he saw with his own eyes segregation, the black kids being forced to attend a separate school. Now, if that not only does that defy reality, this was a huge point of political contention when he was running for the Democratic nomination because he was being hammered away at being against busing black kids into white districts. Famously claiming that doing so would turn white kids' schools into the, quote, jungle. In fact, at the time, the media had a few stories, I thought, since Joe Biden's bringing up this rewriting of history that as early as fourth grade he was fighting to end segregation. See, when that debate occurred in 2019, as he was fighting for the nomination, there were a number of stories that came out before it was decided by the elites that Joe Biden was going to be the one to get the nomination. And that's when Joe Clyburn came out and said, oh, he's our guy, and that's when everyone fell into line. I find it so humorous and perfect that the Democrat Party had a black man anoint Biden as the choice after the issue of busing and segregation was something dogging him. Here's a story from NBC at the time. Joe Biden didn't just compromise with segregationists, he fought for their cause in school, experts say. In a 1975 Senate hearing, the legendary civil rights lawyer Jack Greenberg had something to say to freshman Joe Biden. Greenberg, longtime director of the NCAA Legal Defense Fund, took Biden to task for sponsoring a bill that would limit the power of courts to order school desegregation with busing. It was a move that followed the wishes of many of Biden's white constituents in Delaware. The bill, quote, heaves a brick through the window of school integration, said Greenberg, one of the lawyers who had won the Brown v. Board of Education case that ended legal school segregation 21 years earlier. And according to Greenberg, Biden was the man with his hand on that brick. Biden's role in fighting student busing more than 4 decades ago has reached renewed attention after the 76-year-old presidential candidate touted his ability to compromise with segregationists during his long Senate career. He wasn't compromising with them, he was one of them. The NBC report at the time continued. Biden said he disagreed strongly with these Southerners' views, but needed to work with them to get things done. Biden's comments set off a firestorm among his political rivals and some political analysts who described his language as offensive. Also, around the same time, Politico. Here's how deep Biden's busing problem runs and why the Democrats can't use it against him. In the summer of '74, the freshman Senator Joe Biden found himself under siege from white suburbanites at a meeting just south of Wilmington, Delaware. The possibility that their children would be bused into black schools in the city and that black children would be bused to their schools had sent a wave of consternation through the white community, the community that elected Joe Biden, by the way. Civil rights activists have recently won a lawsuit in which a federal district court recognized that state-sponsored discriminatory education and housing policies had led to segregated metropolitan area schools. The court was then poised to demand a two-way busing program that would transfer students between the city and suburban districts to advance racial balance. For 2 hours, Biden paced the auditorium stage and absorbed the ire of the 250-member audience. Unable to offer them any assurance on the court ruling, he made a promise that he would oppose busing when he returned to Washington for the next legislative session. And he did. He spent the next 4 years pushing legislation to thwart the implementation of busing schemes like the one demanded by the courts in Wilmington around the country. Now that he has declared his candidacy for president, a number of commentators have suggested his record on busing would hurt him in the Democrat primary. No, it made him the nominee. You know, aside from Democrats trying to rewrite the history of this country so that people forget that the Democrats were the party of slavery, the Democrats are the party of the Klan, the Democrats are the party of segregation. Joe Biden is very recent history. This is a political party that elected someone that did everything he could to fight segregation. Or to fight integration, rather. Actively doing so. Here, in fact, is audio from a 1975 interview he did with NPR. And what was occurring here is there were concerns of the attempt to stop integration was unconstitutional. But see, Joe Biden, student loans weren't the first time that Joe Biden has been for altering the Constitution or ignoring the Supreme Court. Back during that period of time, he was trying to figure out a way that he could still stop white kids from having black kids in their schools, even if the law got in his way. And so he was asked about the extent of this and how far he would go in order to stop the integration of black and white students through busing.
What about a constitutional amendment, I asked Biden. Isn't that what you're going to end up supporting if you want to stop court-ordered busing too?
That would clearly do it. We are trying to figure out whether or not we can come up with an innovative piece of legislation which would limit the remedy. And I honestly don't know whether we can come up with something constitutional. And if we can't, I will not, in an attempt to eliminate busing, violate the Constitution. I won't do that. The only way, if I'm going to go at it, I'm going to go at it through a constitutional amendment, if it can't be done through a piece of legislation.
I think we should just really absorb the reality that the last president, that just a year ago, we still had a president of the United States that threatened to change the Constitution to protect white kids from having to integrate with black kids in school. Think about that for a moment. We're not talking about 50, 60 years ago having a president that went to the mat and did everything he could, up to and including threatening to alter the Constitution in support of segregation. We're talking about last year this guy was president. And yet, Republicans, you go to any college campus, and the average student believes that the Republican Party is the party of racism. Really? You look at all of these people that would show up at these rallies with Joe Biden. Oh, Joe Biden's wonderful. The guy was an avid, adamant segregationist. Well, that was a long time ago. Oh, really? Says the people who want to and successfully tear down statues of our founding fathers from, hundreds of years ago, a couple plus 100 years ago. Oh, all of the sudden, time forgives all things. Is that what it is? So we are supposed to dismiss people who haven't been alive for a couple of 100 years because of their views on race. But when it comes to the Democrat Party today and Joe Biden, well, elect him president of the United States. Have him still speak at events. The level of shame that these people should feel but don't shows that there is absolutely no moral compass for these people. No moral compass for these people. And the people who handed us Joe Biden by way of nominating him for the Democrat nomination, then making him president of the United States, have the audacity to claim Donald Trump is a racist? Are you out of your mind? Well, yes, you are. Traffic update, I'm Nick Reed. Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line. One last bit of audio regarding this story that Joe Biden told yesterday. He was speaking about how when he was in fourth grade that he saw what he described as colored kids on a bus and hadn't really ever seen them before. And he noticed that their bus went a separate way than his school. And his mother explained to him, Joey, well, that's just the evils of segregation, or however he tells us she worded it. And it was then at that tender age of being a fourth grader that he first really appreciated and felt the outrage burning in him of segregation and became a great civil rights warrior. Yet, as late as the 70s, when he was a U.S. Senator, I played the audio from an NPR interview at the time in which he said he would change the Constitution, get a constitutional amendment if he had to, in order to stop blacks from tainting the white schools and having them bust in, turning them into, in his words, a jungle. This was a guy that last year was president of the United States. And Democrats can't claim they don't know this, because here is audio from none other than Kamala Harris during the 2019 Democrat primary debate hosted by NBC at the time. Chuck Todd and Rachel Maddow were the moderators.
To hear you talk about the reputations of two United States senators who built their reputations and career on the segregation of race in this country. And it was not only that, but you also worked with them to oppose busing. And there was a little girl in California who was part of the second class to integrate her public schools. And she was bused to school every day. And that little girl was me.
Which that turned out not to actually be true anyhow. I mean, it's very difficult to keep up with the lies of these people. The stories they tell, the lies they tell, it's all fake for the moment, of course, whatever fits the moment. And so here Kamala Harris, the woman of color on the stage, who dropped out after this debate, by the way, because she was doing so poorly in the polling amongst Democrats, mind you. And in which she claimed the reason that she was doing poorly was because of racism and misogyny against women amongst Democrat voters. Once again, it was the primary season. Railing on him for being such a racist. In front of the MSNBC audience, all of the Democrat voters turning in, exposing the fact that he fought with segregationists, that he did what he could to stop little girls like her from attending better quality schools just because she was black. And that's the guy. By the way, that's why Jill Biden hates Kamala Harris so much to this day. Not that that hatred hadn't been built upon during the 4 years of that administration, but that's what really fueled the original hatred that Jill Biden had for Kamala, was because of the fact that Kamala was calling him out on stage during that Democrat primary debate for not just having racist thoughts and ideas and saying racist things, but actively attempting to prevent black kids from being integrated into white schools. And who is it that the Democrats said, oh, that's our guy? Joe Biden. That guy. But the Republican Party is racist, see? Okay. Whatever you say. Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed. All right, well, we'll shift from the racism of the Democrat Party, even in modern era, and head on over to the latest anti-Semitism news within the Democrat Party. Obama praises Harvard for bucking Trump administration's demand amid funding cut threats. This is something. It's a continuation of the Trump's first term, in which he had people who are Jewish. The protections under Civil Rights Act, particularly when it comes to university campuses, also apply to Jewish students. So, as opposed to just having, you can't be discriminated on campus or blocked from education because of this. He had the people of the Jewish faith added to that, which, again, really weird thing for Hitler to do, but hey, who knows? And so this time around, with the clear rise of even at times violent anti-Semitism by the left on college campuses, Trump is like, you guys have to get this under control. If you cannot create an atmosphere in which Jews actually feel safe to learn, then you're not going to get federal funding. And some universities have said, okay, fine, we will. Harvard's like, no, don't think so. I don't think so. Now, they couch it as defending free speech. We all know, however, if there were a bunch of 18, 19, 20-year-old white guys marching through wearing hoods, yelling the N-word at students of color, telling them to go back to Africa, do we think that Harvard would be like, nope, hey, sorry, we're going to defend their right to do it? I think we all know that that's not the case. So this is not about free speech. If it were about free speech, they would defend speech that they clearly did not agree with, which tells us that this is speech they do agree with, because the left is a cesspool of anti-Semitism. The Trump administration's joint task force to combat anti-Semitism, which was announced on Monday, announced that it was freezing over $2 billion in multi-year grants and contracts to Harvard. Obama is praising Harvard for choosing anti-Semitism over the funding. Writing on X, quote, Harvard has set an example for other higher ed institutions rejecting an unlawful and ham-handed attempt to stifle academic freedom while taking concrete steps to make sure all students at Harvard can benefit from an environment of intellectual inquiry, rigorous debate, and mutual respect. Let's hope other institutions follow suit. Of course, again, gaslighting, because that is actually what the withholding of the funding is demanding. Harvard is deciding to forego these dollars so that it can be the opposite of an institution that fosters an environment of intellectual inquiry, rigorous debate, and mutual respect. You think about a political party, we apparently found the one thing that you can do in order to get Democrats to turn away taxpayer funds, and that is to demand that they be non-anti-Semitic. That apparently is the one thing that we seem to have found in which they're like, no, okay, we're not going to go that far. You go ahead and keep those tax dollars. Oh, I happen to believe these institutions shouldn't have this money to begin with from the taxpayers. I mean, why is it we should, particularly Harvard? Harvard isn't exactly a place that is known for having lower income individuals that otherwise might not have access to education. It's generally known as a university in which wealthy people send their kids, and you and I are supposed to be subsidizing it, and then on top of it, subsidize anti-Semitism. The upside for Harvard, and this goes for any institution that the Democrats run, if you reject federal taxpayer dollars, you can be just as racist and anti-Semitic as you want. And Harvard evidently wants to be just that. So this week's panic word is disappeared. That Donald Trump he could disappear anyone. He could disappear. He could disappear anyone. Now, this is all based off of the MS-13 gang member that was sent to the El Salvadorian prison. It's easy, if you only listen to the news, to believe that this was just some dad that wasn't supposed to be deported and he accidentally got deported. And that's horrible and bad. He was supposed to be deported because he argued that his life would be in danger by the Aragua gang members because he was an MS-13 gang member. Those are rival gangs. They said, okay, well, you just have to be deported to some other country, not to El Salvador, where you may be targeted. So he was ordered to be deported. But because he was a gang member, not to El Salvador, and that's where he was accidentally sent to anyhow. That is we're told that is disappearing someone. How is it that a person is disappeared when everyone knows where he is? Isn't that the opposite of being disappeared? Disappeared means you don't know where someone is. That is the whole point. As usual, the left that says a man is a woman and a woman is a man and a secure border is an open border. And, everything is completely upside down. Now, being disappeared means that everyone knows exactly where you are. In fact, in terms of somebody who is not a celebrity or some famous person, his whereabouts are probably known by more people in this world than anyone else's is. So it stands, to reason that the left would tell us that means disappeared. And according to the left, that means that any of us are in danger of being disappeared. Now, even if you take the disappeared aspect out of it, first off, again, this isn't someone who was not supposed to have been deported at all. He was supposed to be deported. He just got deported to the wrong place. And I'm not saying that is, something that, should have happened or, it did. But because a member of a terrorist organization, by the way, MS-13 is a terrorist organization. Because a terrorist, a member of a terrorist organization was deported to the wrong country, that does not suddenly mean that American citizens can be disappeared. Can someone make that connection for me? No one can, because there is no connection. The same people, we're going to do a little revisiting of history here. The same people who tell us we should all panic because if you're in this country illegally, you could be deported, and that means dictatorship, had no problem with Obama arbitrarily picking American citizens that could be killed by our U.S. military without even being charged with a crime because he decided that they were a terrorist without actually even needing to be declared as a terrorist. Now, you tell me which is worse. If you had the option of being deported to the wrong country or killed, which would you choose? What do you think is worse? Apparently, according to the left, it's being deported to the wrong country as a gang member. So we're going to go back and revisit some history as to the left's completely, not just fine, but embracing Obama's ability to be presented with what was called a kill list once a week, where he decided which Americans needed to be targeted and killed by the U.S. government. Well, for some of you, this may be the first time you're hearing about this news. Incidentally, there was a reason, and we'll talk about this as well, that this was being touted. This isn't some right-wing conspiracy. This was first revealed in a massive piece in the New York Times. Why would the New York Times write something that's so damning of President Obama? Well, see, it wasn't supposed to be. He was running for re-election, and his campaign and administration was concerned that they would be seen as being too easy on terrorism. And so this story was crafted in the context of the re-election campaign as he was running against Mitt Romney in order to demonstrate how tough he was on terrorism, that he was so tough. He was willing to do what no other president had ever done and handpick Americans that he determined to be terrorists for execution. As usual, see, Obama was good. So executing Americans without any trial whatsoever, that was good because Obama did it. Trump deports someone to the wrong country, well, Trump's bad. So that is, we all need to freak out because he's a dictator now. That's what's going on here. Latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today it'll be sunny and breezy. We'll see a slight chance of rain this evening with a high near 74. Tonight a chance of showers and thunderstorms mainly after 1 a.m. with a low around 56. For your Thursday, mostly sunny with a high near 82. And looking ahead to Friday, we'll see partly sunny skies with a high near 81.
Town hall. Democrat sounds alarm. Under Trump, no American is safe from abduction, deportation, or torture. Now, what's that based on? Well, nothing, of course. What they're basing it on is the Maryland father, who was an MS-13 gang member and was deported to the wrong country. So that means, as an American, Trump can abduct you and torture you. Did you know that? There's a perfectly logical connection of events. This is the mind of the left. They used to be called, the sky is falling. The sky is falling. But it's like they scream it and claw at their own face. The sky is falling. They can't say anything, it seems, more hysterical than what they've already said. And so they've like hit their limit. All right. Yep. No one's safe. If you're an American, Trump can have you abducted and tortured. Now, I know we laugh about it, but I'm telling you, there are people who believe this stuff. And the people who falsely convince them of these things, that these things are a possible reality, are bad people. I'm just telling you that now. If you are a human being, and this falls on Democrats for this particular subject matter, and you actively try to convince people, I don't think we think about the real-life implications of this, particularly when we talk about people with mental health issues, emotional issues, and you are going around convincing people that at any given moment they can be kidnapped and tortured by the President of the United States, you are a bad person. You're a bad person. You may be thinking, well, I'm not. That's just, it's rhetoric. They know. No, you are bad. You are not a good person. There are good people that do bad things. There are people that are, they're not necessarily the greatest, but they're not a bad person and they do bad things. There are bad people that sometimes do good things. But then there are people that are just bad people. You are a bad person. Straight up, bad person. The lack of humanity to have a person so frightened. That is a toxic relationship. You watch any of these shows, I know I reference them quite often. I've got Discovery ID, and you watch The Killer Beside Me, I think is one of them. And it's usually a husband-wife scenario where 90% of the time the husband's the psychopath. And, Who the Bleep Did I Marry is another one that ran for a while. And they met, and it's wonderful. And then they get married, and all of a sudden, that guy's crazy. And there's always this period of time in which there's this psychological torture in which they will separate them from their families. The pattern's always the same. They isolate them so that they only listen to one voice, and they beat them down and they make them fear everything around them. Nobody else will love you. Everybody's out to get you. You need me to protect you. You're nothing without me. You wouldn't be able to make it out in that world without me. That's how narcissists behave. That's how psychopaths behave. That's how the Democrat Party treats people, particularly its supporters. Without me, you need me. Without me, you're going to die from, botched abortions. Without me, you're going to starve to death. Without me, you're not going to be able to have this any longer. Without me, you're going to be put in concentration camps. Donald Trump, he's going to abduct you and he's going to have you tortured. If you're LGBTQ, he's going to put you in concentration camps. Do you not realize how sick that relationship is? These are bad people. Bad people. They are deliberately making human beings, specifically American citizens, and some people who aren't even American citizens, they're psychologically damaging you. Sarah Arnold in Town Hall, this one specific story, in a bizarre and overblown statement, a Democrat has sparked unnecessary panic by claiming that any American can be abducted, deported, and tortured under President Donald Trump's policies, reflecting dramatic and fear-mongering rhetoric. His comments appear to stoke division rather than reflect reality as the left continues its relentless attacks on the Trump administration's immigration policies. However, such extreme claims are nothing more than scare tactics aimed at rallying opposition and serve only to distract from the real issues of border security and law enforcement. On Tuesday, Representative Richie Torres, a Democrat from New York, stoked panic in viewers during a segment on CNN's The Situation Room. He expressed skepticism about gaining support for his bill from the Republican Party, claiming that Trump fully controls the party. He argued that one of the most significant abuses of Trump's presidency is his disregard of due process, suggesting that without it, the president could falsely label any American as a non-citizen or gang member and have them abducted and tortured in a foreign prison. Actually, why are you just now concerned about this, right? Don't you remember? We all remember that according to the Democrats, the Supreme Court told Donald Trump that he could do whatever he wanted to. Remember that? That lasted a couple of weeks. The Supreme Court told Trump he could assassinate his political opposition. So, why now? Is this some new sudden fear, right? The Supreme Court handed him the right to do this some time ago. Torres comments as he introduced a bill that would require the U.S. to secure the return of so-called mistakenly deported illegal immigrants, and so forth and so forth. Now, okay, so a couple of reasons to bring this up. One, because as usual, it's total BS, built on lies, and just trying to psychologically manipulate people because, again, so many of these Democrats, they're just bad people. Now, after the break, I just thought we'd go back and read a few stories from the Obama administration. One from The Atlantic, by the way, not a conservative publication. Headline, "The Secret Memo Explains Why Obama Can Kill Americans." There was another Atlantic piece around the same period of time, how Team Obama justifies the killing of a 16-year-old American. And then the New York Times secret kill list tests Obama's principles. Now, the New York Times piece was written in order to make all of us as Americans feel secure that Obama was a strong president when it came to terrorism. This was part of trying to help him get reelected. But you look at the difference between the justification of Obama being able to handpick Americans without any charges or trial for killing them, and the Democrats were perfectly fine with that. But now we need to run for the hills because Donald Trump, they claim, might torture you and deport you. Sarah Myers, everyone.
Thank you. Foreman Mechanical Heating and Air. Whether you need services, repairs, or replacement, residential or commercial, team over there, they can handle all of your HVAC needs. One of my favorite things about Foreman Mechanical is that they don't have sale goals. So that means they're not going to push you or force you into something that you may or may not need. They are there simply to diagnose the problem and give you the best option. If you're in a situation where maybe you just want to repair, they're going to do that to the best of their ability. They're going to try to accommodate to you as much as possible. But if it is time for a replacement, Foreman, they use quality equipment, expert installation, and fair and competitive pricing as well. So whether you need HVAC replacements or repairs, give Foreman Mechanical Heating and Air a call today. And of course, you can find all of their contact information under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
All right, so because the MS-13 gang member who had been scheduled to be deported for years now, was deported to the wrong country, which was his own, Democrats are now claiming that this means Trump can disappear you. The country as we know it is over. Trump, according to one Democrat, can even abduct you and have you tortured. Now let's go back to when the great Obama, the greatest president ever to live, according to Democrats, was president of the United States. This is a story from The Atlantic during his administration. The secret memo that explains why Obama can kill Americans. By the way, The Atlantic is not right-wing. Outside the U.S. government, President Obama's order to kill American citizen Anwar al-Awlaki without due process has proved controversial, with experts in law and war reaching different conclusions. Inside the Obama administration, however, disagreement was apparently absent, or so say anonymous sources quoted by the Washington Post. Again, not conservative. The Justice Department wrote a secret memorandum authorizing the lethal targeting of American Anwar al-Awlaki, the American-born radical cleric who was killed by a U.S. drone strike Friday, according to administration officials, the newspaper reported. The document was produced following a review of the legal issues raised by striking a U.S. citizen and involved senior lawyers from across the administration. There was no dissent about the legality of killing the American citizen, U.S. officials said. Isn't that interesting? Months ago, the Obama administration revealed that it would target al-Awlaki. It even managed to wriggle out of a lawsuit filed by the man's father to prevent the assassination. But the actual legal reasoning the Department of Justice used to authorize the killing of the U.S. citizen is secret. Obama declared it classified. Information that the public isn't permitted to read, mull over, or challenge. Why? What justification can there be for President Obama and his lawyers to keep secret what they're asserting is a matter of sound law? This isn't a military secret. It isn't an instance of protecting CIA field assets or shielding a domestic vulnerability to terrorism from public view. This is an analysis of the power that the Constitution and Congress's post-September 11th authorization of military force gives the executive branch. This is a president exploiting official secrecy so that he can claim legal justification for his actions without having to expose his specific reasons to scrutiny. As the Washington Post put it, quote, the administration officials refused to disclose the exact legal analysis used to authorize targeting the American or how they considered any Fifth Amendment right to due process. Obama hasn't just set a new precedent about killing Americans without due process. He has done so, and in a way that deliberately shields from public view the precise nature of the important precedent he has set. It's time for the president who promised to create a White House that's more transparent and accountability than anything we've ever seen before to release the DOJ memo. As David Shipler writes, the legal questions are far from clear-cut, and the country needs to have the difficult discussions. And then there's the fact that, quote, a good many Obama supporters thought that secret legal opinions by the Justice Department rationalizing torture and domestic military arrest, for example, had gone out the door along with the Bush administration, he adds. But now comes a momentous change in policy. with serious implications for the Constitution's restraint on executive power, and Obama refuses to allow his lawyers' arguments to be laid out on the table for the American public to examine. What doesn't he want to get out? Now, again, that was from the Atlantic, left-wing, Democrat publication. On one hand, you can look at it and go, well, I guess they did call him out. The problem was you had a number of pieces. Now, the New York Times, by the way, and we'll talk about this coming up, they also reported on this, but in a way that was supposed to make Obama look good, as he was running for re-election against Mitt Romney, and he was being accused of being soft on terrorism. And so the New York Times used this new declared presidential power to execute Americans without even charging them with anything, with no due process, as something that we should all admire in the post-9/11 world. But you would get a story here or there, and then it was just dropped. Democrats said, no, that's perfectly fine. The President of the United States is allowed to handpick Americans by name for execution because he and he alone determines, yeah, that person's probably a terrorist. There's another piece we'll share coming up, as well as the New York Times, in which a 16-year-old kid, his killing was authorized by Obama, also an American.
Springfield's Talk 1041, your first alert forecast from Ozark's first meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. Today it'll be sunny and breezy. We'll see a slight chance for rain this evening with a high near 74. Tonight a chance of showers and thunderstorms mainly after 1 a.m. with a low around 56. For your Thursday, mostly sunny with a high near 82. And looking at a Friday, we'll see partly sunny skies with a high near 81.
The left is telling us all that we need to freak out because the administration sent an illegal immigrant who is a member of a terrorist organization. When he was deported, he got deported to the wrong country. And so this means that Trump has decided he has the right to kidnap and torture even Americans if he wants to. The left, they are lying. They're full of crap, not even about the facts of the case, but about their outrage. Obama took historically unprecedented steps and acquired power that no president ever was imagined to have had, and that is to decide he got to pick what Americans he decided might be commiserating with terrorists, and then he got to have them killed. And he did it in numerous instances. Read to you prior to the break a piece from The Atlantic at the time about how it was that he even refused to release the Department of Justice's justification for doing so. So basically what Obama said is, oh, well, I was told that I could by our attorneys. Oh, well, can we see that paperwork? Can we see their explanation? No, sorry, we're not going to let you see that. See, the left loves Obama. So don't let them convince you that they actually have any concerns about people's freedoms or liberties. They're lying. This is another piece from The Atlantic during that period of time, how Team Obama justifies the killing of a 16-year-old American. Ask about the strike that killed... I remember when this happened so vividly. Ask about the strike that killed him. A senior advisor to President Obama's campaign suggested he should have, quote, had a more responsible father. Cornered by reporters with video cameras, former White House Press Secretary Robert Gibbs, a senior advisor to President Obama's re-election campaign, attempted to defend the kill list that the Obama administration uses to determine whose body should next be blown apart. American drone strikes have resulted in hundreds of dead innocents in the last 4 years. Even as the program has killed a number of high-level al-Qaeda terrorists, there are two remarkable things about the ensuing exchange, which eventually turns into a discussion about a dead 16-year-old kid. First, it's vital for the uninitiated to understand how Team Obama misleads when it talks about its drone program. Ask how their kill list can be justified. Gibbs replies that, quote, when there are people who are trying to harm us and have pledged to bring terror to the shores, we've taken the fight to them. Since the kill list itself is secret, there's no way to offer a specific counterexample. But we do know that the U.S. drones are targeting people who have never pledged to carry out any attacks in the United States. Take Pakistan, where Obama had the CIA kill some people without even knowing their identities. Quote, as Obama nears the end of his term, officials said the kill list in Pakistan has slipped to fewer than 10 al-Qaeda targets, down from as many as 24, the Washington Post reports. The agency now aims many of its predator strikes at the Haqqani network, which has been blamed for attacks on U.S. forces in Afghanistan. The vast majority would never make their way to New York or Washington, D.C., and the Obama administration would never agree to rules that permitted only the killing of threats to the homeland. The second notable statement concerning the killing of a 16-year-old American citizen by Obama, Tom Junod gives the backstory. Quote, he was the son of Anwar al-Awlaki, who was also born in America, who was also an American citizen, and was killed by drone strikes or by a drone 2 weeks before his son was, along with another American citizen named Samir Khan. Of course, both Anwar and Samir Khan were, at the very least, traitors to the country. They had both gone to Yemen and taken up with al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, and Awlaki had proven himself an expert insider of those with murderous designs against America and Americans, the rare man of words who could be said to have a body count. When he was killed on September 30th of 2011, Obama made a speech about it. A few months later, when the Obama administration's public relation campaign about it embraces what has come to be known as the targeted killing, reached its climax in a front-page story in the New York Times that presented the President of the United States as the last word in deciding who lives and who dies. He was quoted as saying that the decision to put Awlaki on the kill list and then to kill him was, quote, an easy one. But his 16-year-old son wasn't on the American kill list, nor was he a member of al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, nor was he, quote, an inspiration, as his father styled himself. For those determined to draw American blood, nor had gone operational. as American authorities said his father had in drawing up plots against Americans and American interest. He was a boy who hadn't seen his father in 2 years since his father had gone into hiding. He was a boy who knew his father was on America's kill list and who snuck out of his family's home in the early morning hours of September 4th of 2011 to try and find him. He was a boy who was still searching for his father when his father was killed by Obama, and who, on that night himself, was also killed, was saying goodbye to the second cousin with whom he lived while on his search and the friends he made. He was a boy among boys then, a boy among boys eating dinner by an open fire along the side of a road when an American drone came out of the sky and fired the missile that killed them all. How does Team Obama justify killing him? The answer Gibbs gave is chilling. Adamson. It's an American citizen that is being targeted without any due process, without trial, and he's underage, he's a minor, to which Gibbs said, I would suggest you should have a far more responsible father if they are truly concerned about the well-being of their children. I don't think becoming an al-Qaeda jihadist terrorist is the best way to go about doing your business. Now, this is the Democrat administration of Obama. So the same party that wrings its hands over separating children from their parents then took the stance when they killed a 16-year-old boy because he happened to be the son of somebody that Obama deemed to be a terrorist danger to the United States of America, said, well, should have had a better father. That's his fault because his dad wasn't a very good dad. So the Democrat logic is, you can't separate kids from their family, but you can kill them with their family. The New York Times, during Obama's re-election efforts, in which, of course, he was successful, had the Peace Secret Kill List test Obama's principles. This was the enemy, served up in the latest chart from the intelligence agency's 15 al-Qaeda suspects in Yemen. With Western ties, the mugshots and brief biographies resembled a high school yearbook layout. Several were Americans. 2 were teenagers, including a girl who looked even younger than her 17 years. Teenage girl, American. President Obama, overseeing the regular Tuesday counterterrorism meeting of 24 security officials in the White House Situation Room, took a moment to study the faces. It was January 19th, 2010, the end of a first year in office punctuated by terrorist plots and culminating in a brush with catastrophe over Detroit on Christmas Day, a reminder that a successful attack could derail his presidency. Oh, well, we can't have that. Yet he faced adversaries without uniforms, often indistinguishable from the civilians around them. Quote, how old are these people, he asked, according to 2 officials present. If they're starting to use children, he said of al-Qaeda, we're moving into a whole different phase. I guess this is when he decided kids were also up for being targeted. It was not a theoretical question, writes the New York Times. Mr. Obama has placed himself at the helm of a top-secret nominations process to designate terrorists for kill or capture, of which the capture part has become largely theoretical. He's vowed to align the fight against al-Qaeda with American values. The chart, introducing people whose deaths he might soon be asked to order, underscored just what a moral and legal conundrum this could be. Mr. Obama is the liberal law professor who campaigned against the Iraq war and torture, and then insisted on approving every new name on an expanded kill list, poring over terror suspects, biographies on what one official called the macabre baseball cards of an unconventional war. When a rare opportunity for a drone strike at the top of the terrorist arises, but his family is with him, it is the president who has reserved to himself the final moral calculation. Kind of sounds like a dictator, doesn't it? As the New York Times write it, Obama decided that he got to choose whether or not the kids got killed along with the suspected terrorist. Quote, He is determined that he will make these decisions about how far and wide these operations will go, said Thomas Donnellan, his national security advisor. His view is that he's responsible for the position of the United States in the world. He's determined to keep the tether pretty short. Again, sort of sounds like a dictator. Nothing else in Mr. Obama's first term has baffled liberal supporters and confounded conservative critics alike as his aggressive counterterrorism record. His actions have often remained inscrutable, observed by awkward secrecy rules, polarized political commentary, and the president's own deep reserve. In interviews with the New York Times, 36 of his current and former advisors described Obama's evolution since taking on the role without precedent in presidential history of personally overseeing the shadow of war with al-Qaeda. Now, that's just a couple of pages into about 8 pages of the New York Times piece at the time. As I mentioned earlier, this wasn't written as a critique for Obama. This was written in order to bolster his national security credentials as he ran for re-election. You see, at that period of time, Obama was coming under criticism that he was being soft on terrorism. This is why, when it came to ISIS, he downplayed them, saying that, comparing them to the JV team, because ISIS was something that was on the stage, and Republicans and the Romney campaign were noting that this ISIS group no one's heard of could be problematic if they're not taken care of, and Obama said, they're just JV. We don't need to worry about them. And it's also part of the reason that the Obama administration falsely claimed that the attack on Benghazi wasn't some coordinated terrorist attack that we failed to stop or plan for, but instead was some random person who posted a video on the internet making a bunch of people mad. There was this problem his re-election campaign was facing, that he wasn't tough on terrorism. So the New York Times positioned this new presidential power acquired by Obama in secret to kill Americans, even teenagers, if he wanted to. It was all presented to show how strong he was against terrorism, that he was willing to take on this burden as president, to kill whole families if necessary without any due process whatsoever, including children. That is how strong that man is. That is what he has on his shoulders as he runs for re-election. Now, the same people who today throw rose petals at the feet of Barack Obama are wringing their hands in despair over the fact that Donald Trump deported a terrorist to the wrong country, claiming that that proves he is a dictator that has taken it upon himself the powers that he believes allows him to torture and disappear any American. What they're accusing Trump absurdly of potentially planning on doing is what they defended Obama for actually doing. That's all just truth. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. Oh, shoot. All right, bear with me. I got to... So aggravating. I had a new review I wanted to share with you. I'll find it here. Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty. Okay. Oh, boy, this is very frustrating. Here we go. This from Chad. I cannot say enough good things about Emily Johnson. We were in the market for such a long time. She was patient, helpful, went far beyond what any other realtor we've ever worked with has gone to make sure we got into a great home. She helped find the right contractors, get our place updated, made the paperwork a breeze. She negotiated hard when we needed it, and she got us a great price on a home our whole family loves. Thank you so much, Emily. That's from Chad recently of posting a review for Emily Johnson House Theory Realty. You know, there's almost, I imagine, a tinge of jealousy of people who have gone through the process before with someone who wasn't Emily, and then they see people who their very first experiences with Emily, like, you don't know what it's like. You don't know. You don't know how good you have it. You haven't been with somebody before you were with Emily. You can't truly appreciate her until you've been through it before. Well, count your blessings and consider yourself privileged if the only experience you've ever had buying or selling your home is with Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty. You can find her at ksgf.com under Nick's endorsements. With the Democrats spending all of their time focusing on the poor victim, MS-13 gang member that was deported to the wrong country. In fact, there are a number, or at least one elected Democrat, who he has announced he is going down to El Salvador to try and rescue the gang member. I thought I would share with you some illegal immigration stories of, actual victims, because the media and the Democrats don't care about these people. Rachel Marin, mother of 5, killed on a hiking trail, Maryland, of August 2023. A Maryland jury yesterday found Victor Martinez Hernandez guilty of raping and killing the 37-year-old. She was a mother of 5, out hiking. Authorities arrested Hernandez last year, alleging that he entered the U.S. and continued a crime spree that began in El Salvador. He was found guilty on all 4 counts: first-degree murder, first-degree rape, third-degree sexual offense, and kidnapping, and now faces a maximum sentence of life in prison without the chance of parole. Trump praised the verdict. Why is it when it comes to the issue of illegal immigration, if you just take the amount of time, take any media person, any elected Democrat, and time out, or you can just gut check gauging how much time they spend focusing on a designated terrorist gang member versus a mother of 5 who was raped, tortured, and murdered by somebody illegally. And you see where their sympathies lie. U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement harshly criticizing a Maryland sanctuary city for releasing an illegal immigrant charged with murder. Bill Malugin of Fox News reporting ICE Baltimore says the sanctuary county of Prince George's County in Maryland ignored their detainer request and released a 2-time previously deported Guatemalan illegal alien alleged murderer into the community. 32-year-old Renee Popchub facing pending murder charges in Prince County, but ICE says he was released from local custody last Tuesday with no cooperation or notification. ICE Baltimore found him, arrested him in Hadesville, Maryland on Saturday. By the way, it is so important to understand that's what a sanctuary city does. A sanctuary city is not protecting otherwise law-abiding citizens from being deported. It specifically takes people like this, someone who's charged with murder, that a blue county run by probably a prosecutor that was put in place by George Soros is released out into the community, and they ignore the ICE detainer request that would have turned them over to federal custody. For whom is that compassion?